Hello everybody, it is N, and today I'm doing a review on Dark Tower, Stephen King, The Dark Tower, Book 1, which is Gunslinger. This is the first book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, and it's one of his most popular books by far. It tells the tale of Roland of Gilead, or something like that, and he's just going across a couple villages and just starting off his journey. It's just starting off his entire quest, which is a 7-book saga, as most of you probably know. It's the entire Dark Tower series, and this is the beginning of it, and it's often one of people's favorite books from the series. So I'm going to review it today, and I'll let you guys know my thoughts. So, the version that I have, the movie kind of cover version, it has a good old 300 pages, so it's not a very long book, plus considering how very few words are on every page, so it's not a very long book. It only took me a couple of days, I think 3, and my biggest issue with it was that it was very confusing to get off the ground. So we were going through the story, and I talked to a few other people as well, and they didn't really understand it either. So it might not just be me, it might just be a general hard book of his. It was my first book, so it was my first book from Stephen King, so that might be why it's somewhat difficult. But I think that it's fair to say that it's a little bit of a confusing book, because it goes into some tangents about his old life. It talks about his history, and it has some flashbacks and stuff like that. So it gets a little bit confusing, which is fair. So the general story, I'm not going to spoil anything, so you can keep watching if you want. The general story is that he's traveling across the world, following the Dark Man, and he gets to another village, and he does some stuff there, and then he goes and he meets a boy named Jake. The kid Jake, he's from our world. You'll know that from, like, reading any back of the book. I'm not going to tell you what happens on all of that stuff, but I am going to tell you there's a boy named Jake from our world that comes to their world. I'm not going to tell you how or anything like that, but he's a very important part of the story. He is very important. So it introduces 2 characters, Roland and Jake, the boy, and so I think it comes off as a strong introduction, giving us the important stuff, and it's building the world and telling us what it's really like to be in Midworld, I believe it's called. So the confusing part really exists before Jake comes into the world. I believe, I've only read it once, so I can't give you a full synopsis of it, but from what I understand, he goes through one village, and while he's going through one of the village, he stops and he talks to a villager about a time that he crossed another village before, and the time he crossed that other village, it was a really interesting story. So he talks a lot about that, and then they jump back to the present, and there's some mystical animals and stuff, and that confuses me because I don't know what the setting is really. And then it goes on, and during his entire journey, he has constant flashbacks to when he was a kid and what happened in his childhood and stuff like that. So it's somewhat confusing because of all the timelines that exist, as well as all the new details. But it's somewhat hard to make a story without that, because it is really a big universe. It's a very complicated universe. I haven't finished it yet. As the time of me recording this, I'm on book 4, so I haven't finished it, so I don't know exactly what the ending is, but I do know it's a very complicated world, and we're going through this world that really has no constant definition, no real rules to it, other than it's a flaky world, and we don't really know what's going on. So it does make sense that it's confusing, but at the same time, it bothered me a lot. So that's kind of what I would put it as. It was a really good book. It was interesting. It was my first book from him, and I wasn't disappointed. It was a pretty good one. It's not my favorite. I wouldn't put it up somewhere in my top anything. So that's my review of it, I guess. The characters were very well developed as well. Roland was immediately, we know what he's about, and Jake, we know exactly what he's about. So the characters on this are on point. I can't complain about that, just as I can't complain about any Stephen King character. But that's about it. That's my review for the book. It's a good start to the Dark Tower series, but it's confusing. So I would give it a solid 3 out of 5 for me. It was a good book, but it wasn't. After reading a bunch of other Stephen King books, it just didn't have that punch that all of his other books have. So I'm not really excited to read this again in the future, but I would. It's not an issue. It's a good book, so I'll still give it a 3 out of 5, a positive or more than 50% review. So that's still good. So that's my review for Stephen King's Dark Tower Book 1, The Gunslinger. If you want to see more reviews, subscribe to the channel, like this video if you like this review, comment, tell me what you guys thought about the book. I know it was confusing for me, and I know it was confusing for a few other people, but I want to know from you, so please do let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, I've got a few more videos coming up in the coming weeks. I'm going to shoot a bunch of reviews of all the Dark Tower books I've read, as well as a few other books that aren't from the Dark Tower or Stephen King universe completely. So that might be cool. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.